Welcome back to the show. We're talking about Iraq and Libya and the chaos that followed in both countries after their longtime leaders, Saddam Hussein and Muammar Gaddafi, were overthrown. We focus now on Libya. It's been more than 4 years since a NATO bombing campaign helped rebels topple Gaddafi. And although many celebrated his demise, there was no peace. International observers refer to Libya today as a failed state. And ISIL also has a foothold in the country. Joining me now from California is Libyan activist Omar Turbi. He lobbied the United States to take part in the NATO airstrikes that helped oust Muammar Gaddafi in 2011. His brother was imprisoned in Libya during Gaddafi's rule. And joining us from London is Sukant Chandan. He's a political analyst who focuses on challenges to the global south, the nations of Africa, Central and Latin America, and most of Asia. Welcome to both of you to the show. Omar, let me start with you. As I pointed out, there are many observers, many analysts who consider Libya today a failed state. In fact, The Economist magazine says it is barely a country anymore. Now, you lobbied the United States to take part in those NATO airstrikes against Muammar Gaddafi. In retrospect, was that a mistake?
No, I don't believe it's ever a mistake to get rid of a dictatorship. Yes, we do have a state that's not running correctly, but people can actually speak their mind. During the Gaddafi regime, nobody could speak their mind. People were totally oppressed. So, like any other country in the region, democracies don't happen overnight. And if I had my wish back in 2010, 11, whatever, we would have actually had the transition to the change not happen as abruptly as it did happen. When you point to Iraq and the chaos that's going on in Iraq, it's totally unlike what's happening in Libya. Libya has not gotten to the level of chaos that's taken place, or the disintegration of the state as in Iraq. I think we're very hopeful that Libya could, in due time, come together. And my thinking is, Go ahead, sir.
Sukant, is Libya better off today than it was under Gaddafi?
Well, of course it isn't. From once being the country of the highest development indexes, that's the United Nations statistics, under the previous government of the Jamahiriya, to being one of the most collapsed states, the most traumatized states in the world. And our guest is absolutely incorrect and disingenuous when he says there's any freedom to say what you like in the post-Gaddafi regime. It's not even a regime. It's just a conglomeration of rival death squads bickering with each other over the spoils, which is the corpse of Libya after NATO and allied death squad operation in destroying it. People are being kidnapped. People are being crucified. People are being raped, abducted. All kinds of horrors are going on in Libya. It's absolutely incomparable of what it was like before. And obviously our guest has learned nothing from the US and British project to demolish Iraq post-2003, because that's a very similar model they rolled out on Libya. On the basis of lies, they destroyed Libya like they destroyed Iraq. There was no bombing of civilian protesters from the air. That was a central lie that was rolled out to justify this project of destruction. And also Libya proved that after 10 years that the Western governments were saying that they were fighting al-Qaeda, they openly, overtly allied with al-Qaeda type of factions, including Hakim Bel-Ahaj, which many Libyans say he's a Daesh leader, a leader of the so-called misnamed Islamic State. And today in Sirte and many other towns, the death squad known as Islamic State is proliferating and taking control. Is this freedom? Is this better than before? I think only a fool would say it is.
Omar, do you want to respond to that?
Well, I think my colleague here stated many facts. As a matter of fact, there is that whole element of extremism in Libya that's taken hold, which is very, very unfortunate. And there's no unified government. We're very concerned about possible continuation of what's going on. You have a defunct illegal government operating out of Tripoli, and then you have a House of Representatives operating out of the eastern part of Libya that's not able to enforce any decisions. Yes, I'd have to agree with my friend, but I'm not going to actually go to the extreme and say that Libya is never going to come back and put itself back together. Libya does have good resources. Its position in relative to Europe and the region is a good geographical location. My hopes now going forward is within a time frame, I don't know, maybe 12 months, maybe something along those lines, the United Nations would come in with help from some of the European countries and run some form of democratic process and maybe get a much more viable legislative body that would be operating out of the capital of Tripoli, and maybe we can have some light at the end of the tunnel. But I wouldn't be so far to say that it's a hopeless situation in Libya. It's not.
So can't you agree that, you know, as early as 12 months or perhaps a little bit longer, there could be a unified government in Tripoli, that it would become a stable democratic state?
Well, if we parallel with the situation in Syria, there has to be a force on the ground that can actually, you know, take the leadership in stabilizing the country. In Syria, that's clearly the Syrian government and the Syrian army and its allied partners, such as Russia, Iran, the Baghdad government, and also Hezbollah. And in Libya, it's, well, most likely it's General Haftar and the government in Tobruk. But the government in Tobruk is not being allowed by the West to actually take the leadership that Libya actually requires, because General Haftar believes in national reconciliation with the previous government of members of the government of the Jamahiriya. He does not believe in having these disgusting torture trials which is going on in Tripoli. He believes in reconciliation with the former government because he recognizes these are the people who can actually bring some kind of stability and peace and functionality to the dysfunctional state which is Libya today. I'd like to ask Mr. Turbi, if I may, that he said that it's worth destroying Libya because now you can speak your mind. But you can't speak your mind in Libya. As I've said, there's illegal abductions, illegal dungeons, etc. So what today is better than it was before under the Jamahiriya? That's a question I put to you, because under the Jamahiriya there was a reform process, as Mr. Turbi knows very well, that all those political interest groups that teamed up with NATO and Al-Qaeda type factions to destroy and plummet Libya into the mess it is today, all of them were actually in the reform process of Gaddafi's government, and they were they were either in or very close to partnering up with the Libyan Jamahiriya. So what is better today?
Okay, let me put that question to Omar.
You know, I think it would be fair not to bring in Syria or Iraq into a discussion about Libya. It's like the difference between an ant and an elephant, to be honest with you, in terms of what's going on with chaos and the level of death and destruction.
Not for Libyans, it's not. Not for Libyans, it's not.
Yeah, it really isn't. And I'm not really trying to defend what's going on the ground now, and I'm just trying to put a scale to what's happening. Yes, it's chaotic. Yes, there are problems. But to pose an unfair and really not a good question that are people better off today than they were
Omar,
during the Gaddafi regime. So if you say, are you suggesting we should have continued going on under the dictatorship? I can tell you honestly, I had some level of contact and some level of discussions with the Gaddafi regime, including himself, and I saw nothing but corruption and imprisonment and torture,
Omar,
and all that stuff during the Gaddafi regime.
You had NATO bombing Libya. It was an action that you supported. Gaddafi was killed. Was that the sum total of NATO's strategy? We bombed this place, we killed Gaddafi. Was there any evidence that NATO had any kind of a post-Gaddafi plan?
There wasn't. Again, you're terming this and explaining this as if it was nothing was going on the ground in Libya. The Gaddafi regime wasn't actually attacking civilians and killing them by the thousands. It wasn't that the Gaddafi regime was running his military machine into Benghazi, ready to kill hundreds of thousands of people. NATO actually reacted to those prospects of killing hundreds of thousands of people in Libya. Okay, so when you say that NATO came in and bombed Libya to oblivion, that's just not the case. Yes, they did participate And yes, they had to do and enforce the non-fly zone to get rid of the regime of Gaddafi. Everybody thought that it was going to fall within 30 days, 60 days. It took about 7 to 8, 9 months to get rid of the regime. And then we found all those massive amounts of weapons that he amassed in Libya. So yes, you're right. It's not in the most favorable state in Libya now. It's terrible. I couldn't go. I haven't back to Libya. I haven't been back in Libya in about 14 months. I used to go there every 60 days, every 30 days. I can't because it's not a safe place to be. I totally agree with you. There is so much that can be changed.
Right,
you know,
so
I'm not disagreeing with that.
Okay.
But I'm saying is, how could you sit here and say Libya should have actually stayed under the Gaddafi regime? That's preposterous. I mean, this just makes no sense.
Right, Sukant, we do have another development in Libya, and that is, you know, in this political vacuum, you've had a group like Islamic State or ISIL or Daesh, call it what you will, seeking to expand its influence in Libya right now. There's a report out by the UN that says that Islamic State, quote, sees Libya as its best opportunity to expand its control beyond Syria and Iraq. What do you make of that?
Well, wasn't it Muammar Gaddafi who said in the first weeks of the pro-NATO death squad rebellion in February 2011 that who are you, i.e. who are these so-called rebels? And he said it very clearly. They're Al-Qaeda and they're on drugs. And
no, he didn't say the word "who are you" in that context at all. He didn't say it in that context. He didn't say it in that context. Please, don't say that.
I'll give you a chance to respond in a moment. Go ahead, Sukant.
And now it's come out that Captagon is the drug of choice of Daesh and the other death squads in Syria and in other places of the Middle East and North Africa. Nearly everything Muammar Gaddafi said throughout 2011 has come to be true. And here we have our guest who can't even go back to Libya. I'm sure he probably was able to go back to Libya under the Jamahiriya. And I'm sure his political colleagues who called on the former colonizers of Libya to destroy Libya were involved in the reform program. He himself is saying he cannot go back. He himself hasn't given any inkling, idea, example of any improvement whatsoever, apart from one, that now you can speak your mind, but you can't speak your mind. Who's running Sirte? Daesh. Who's running other towns? Daesh. Who's running Tripoli? A death squad known as Libya Dawn.
All right.
It's a total joke. I mean,
Right, let me give Omar a chance to respond to that. Omar, when Muammar Gaddafi said, "Who are you?" what was the context of that question? Who was he referring to?
Well, I want to make sure that my friend here from London knows the history behind what Gaddafi said. So at least if you're going to come up and speak about Libya, you want to get your record straight and you get your information correct. When Gaddafi said, "Who are you?" he wasn't referring to a group of terrorists or Al-Qaeda or Daesh then. He was known to be taking drugs like cocaine and marijuana and all those things, definitely. And when he's high on drugs, he felt very superior to anything and everybody around him. So he was looking at the Libyan people and saying, "Who are you? I'm from the superior tribe. I'm the Gaddafi person. I'm the person who actually is the revolutionary that, you know, took Libya from whatever it was to a better place or whatever." So really, he wasn't referring specifically at the time that he said that. I remember exactly. It was his Bab al-Aziziyya place, standing up and had his green book in his hand, and he said that he wasn't referring to terrorists in the country.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. Omar Turbi, Sukant, Chandan, thanks to both of you for joining us.